I'm Oliver Perry. Welcome back to the show. Today, we have another illustrious guest. She is a former real estate agent. She is a STR specialist. She is also a momager, and maybe we'll get into that during the interview. But for now, let's get right into it. Let's talk about some STRs and let's talk about some mistakes. Janelle Davis, how are you, ma'am?
I am amazing. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I got Janelle on today. How could I be better? All right, Janelle. So you got a lot of stuff going on, but I want to
Yeah.
make sure we give the people a little bit of your backstory, and then we're gonna get straight into it. And let's make it short because I want to give them as much value as we can. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of my backstory. Okay. Originally from Queens. Sorry about the ambulance noise if you hear it. Most of my life in Maryland and got pregnant at 19 in the literally in the middle of midterm week. So flew me in a helicopter, gave birth to a 1.85-pound baby. I did finish my degree on time with a 3.85 average and did my master's, bought my first house in 2011 when my daughter was 5. At the time, I think I was only making $39,000. It may not have been the best decision,
Mm,
but it ended up being the best decision.
love it.
And I built my second house in 2019. Um, and I am a former realtor licensed in Maryland and DC. It was something that I got into because I knew I wanted to be a real estate investor, and I thought it was the smarter route to kind of learn real estate while being an agent. But I realized it wasn't something that I loved, so I got into short-term rentals when I became aware of them, and not only that, I started my daughter's, or not my daughter started her own business, Cookie Crumble Bakery in December 2020. And so running both business simultaneously is amazing. It's thrilling, it's exciting, and exhausting, to be honest.
I love it. Fantastic. All right, so let's get into this. Let's get into the skinny. So STRs, short-term rentals. Let's talk about your biggest mistake so far in the short-term rental space, and let's get into how you what you learned from it, and see if we can help some people avoid that same mistake. So, what started you on that? What started you to get that? What was that first issue that you had with your STRs?
So the first issue I had was creating a system
Okay.
and seeing that that system worked and it worked well. And then when I got my next unit, I got a little cocky and I was like, I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. Skipped some steps and launched my second unit, which was fabulous,
Mhm.
and did not get the same results. And I said, well, what is happening? Why am I not getting the bookings? Why am I having all these issues?
Mhm.
And it's because I didn't stick to my system. And I am not a systems lady. However, I know how important it is to have systems in any business, especially in STRs. And so that was my first mistake in this business.
So you talked about what was the space of difference between the first STR and the second? At what point would you be like, okay, yeah, this is not what I thought it was going to be as far as the system parts concerned? Because you said there was a major difference between the two. What was that difference? Where did you see that made that?
Oh, so the difference was so with SDRs you want to try to automate it as much as possible.
Okay.
So some of my automated systems, including pricing and things of that nature, I did not follow the system that I used the first time, which had gotten me great success. And because I didn't do that, again, pricing being one of the major items, um, the bookings were not flowing in,
Right.
and then I attracted the wrong kind of guests. So that is one of the key things that I learned about pricing. Pricing will attract certain people. So That was pretty much it.
So
And it was disastrous.
right. Let's go deeper into that because that sounds from what you're telling me that sounds like that was the root part of what happened next.
Hmm.
What are you looking at when it comes to pricing to differentiate? How does that really affect who comes and who doesn't?
Yeah, so with pricing, so you want to price it where you get the bookings flowing in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get a new unit, um, more than likely you're paying a deposit, and then you're paying first month's rent or mortgage,
Right.
depending on which route you go. You pay for furnishing, you pay for amenities. You're just kind of in the not well, yeah, you're kind of in the hole. You spent all this money on
Mm-hmm.
getting this unit ready to launch. And so you want to get as many bookings as possible to start recouping some of that money and to also make sure that you can pay next month's rent.
Right.
And it's a strategy and a tricky line to make sure you price it where maybe you provide some type of discount to incentivize people to come book with you,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's a fine line where you can price it too low and then you attract the wrong audience. And this is what I already knew. However, again, I didn't follow my pricing strategy that I used the first time. And my first three bookings were it was horrific. It was I mean, I put so much into this unit
Right.
to make it really modern, really chic, a bit of luxury in it to give my guests a certain experience. I am very big on customer experience and serving excellence. And I priced it a little bit too low. And
Mm.
the first group of young girls, and I knew I don't know if you're ready for me to even go into the story, but I knew when they
Go on.
came to check in
Okay.
that this was going to be an issue, and it ended up being a huge issue, a huge one, and
So
it
tell me.
cost me.
So what happened? So tell me about it. Let's go ahead and because you're there now. Let's go ahead, jump right
Yeah,
on in, and let's let's
yeah,
let's get this
yeah.
out.
Let me see if I can tell you the story and not make it too long.
Okay.
Um, so the young lady, she asked for an earlier check-in, and I gave her that. I think like an hour or so. She still shows up 2 hours prior to the earlier check-in that I um, approved for.
Okay.
And she calls and she says, "Hey, I'm at the gate. Can you let me in?" I say, "Well, no, your check-in is not until whatever time that was." She said, "Well, we took an Uber, so can you just at least let us through the gate because we don't, whatever."
Right.
I said, okay. I said, but you can't get to the apartment. You'll still have to wait till check in. And the reason why that's important is two reasons. One, usually if you have a same day check out, check in,
Mm-hmm.
your cleaners are still cleaning and sanitizing, and you want to allow them that time to, properly clean the unit,
Right.
right?
Makes sense.
And especially during COVID. And two, my other thing is I don't allow for a super early check-in because essentially you're getting for something that you didn't pay for.
Right.
So if you really wanted a whole extra day, then you were supposed to pay for that, and it sets the tone for the remainder of your stay if you're too lenient, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So I'm very funny about that, and so I let her through the gate. Literally 5 minutes later, less than 5 minutes, the leasing office calls me and says, "I have some of your guests here who have asked if they can sit in the leasing office until their check in." And she said, "Let me tell you, Janelle, this is absolutely not allowed. They are
Oh.
not allowed into this leasing office. That is that's your business to handle.
Right.
Yada, yada, yada. You will be fined $500."
Crap.
Oh my God.
Wait a second. 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 So they charge you 500 just for them going in and asking? Did they actually sit in there? Was just asking the question?
Yeah,
Wow.
that I mean, because the leasing office doesn't want to be bothered. That's part of our contract. That's part of the deal. Like
Right.
that's not their job. And and
Wow.
it wasn't just her. So here was the other problem. It was her and three other girls. but she booked for two people. So we have house rules,
Right.
which they have to agree that they read and that they agree to it. And one of those house rules is you are not to go to the leasing office or contact the leasing office. If you have
Right.
questions, contact the guest. The other one is you are not supposed to have extra guests or outside guests unless it's within the reservation, because sometimes you pay more for extra guests.
Hmm.
So she already had broken two house rules and she ain't even checked in yet. So, and needless to say, let me fast forward. They were smoking in the unit, which was another house broken. They
Uh-huh.
were loud as heck. That was another house rule broken. They had even more guests that came in. That was another house rule
Oh my
broken.
God.
And then we had issues with them checking out. That was another house rule broken.
Sheesh.
And so checking out, my cleaner pulled up with strapped. She had a waist trainer on,
Uh-huh.
but she was strapped inside of the waist trainer, and she banged on the door. She said, "I need y'all to get out." And I guess because they saw that, they started, getting their belongings together to leave the unit. So it took them. They left about an hour and a half after checkout time, and but they were moving slow. One of the
Right.
girls was still sitting there eating her food, doing like the
Yeah, she was trying to be tough.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was terrible. And they destroyed all of my linens. So it's like they decided to wipe their face full of makeup with the sheets. I don't know what they were doing.
Mm.
Um, and it just, all in all, it was a nice little bill for myself. Um, and all because I didn't follow my
Your
system.
system.
Yeah,
So all this happened. Good gracious.
yeah,
Just because you didn't follow the system. Now,
yeah,
what is
exactly.
so what does your system look like? Because like you gotta have a heck of a system now, just based off of that experience. 'Cause I'm sure you took some of that and applied that to the system now. So what does that system look like that keeps this kind of thing from happening? Of course, outside the pricing thing that you talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah, like I said, the pricing is a big part of it, and it's also the communication with the guests.
Right.
And so, a lot of our communication is automated, and it excuse me, prior to them even checking in, it sends messages to them of reminders. And if I'll say something along the lines like, if these house rules do not work for you, we understand, you are welcome to cancel. Now we do have a moderate cancellation policy, so if they do cancel, we still get some money from it.
Right.
um, and then in addition to that, they have to sign a document. So we have documents now that are automated, that they have to sign before they check in.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense because that now you're getting
Mm-hmm.
legalities into it. So
Mm-hmm.
when they go over pricing like that, when you have all these issues,
Mm-hmm.
do you recoup any of that money through Airbnb? How does that work? Because I imagine that, like you said, that bill was big, and you're not trying to come out of pocket with everything. How does that work? By your eyes rolling, I'm assuming it didn't go well.
So with Airbnb, they'll ask, did you ask the guest to pay for
Right.
damages, whatever you lost? So that's the first step. They want you to ask the guest directly, which in my opinion, I mean, I understand it, but at the same time, when you have guests that violate, chances are they're not going to pay.
Yeah, you're not.
So, and then you have to go through their, pretty much like their claims department, similar to like insurance companies,
Mm.
and you have to provide proof. So you really need to document, and you have 60 days. So then it's a trick bag, because when a guest checks out, obviously, they have the option to leave a review.
Right.
So if you ask too soon for them to reimburse you for damages, they can retaliate by giving you a bad review.
Mm.
So the timing of you putting a claim in, you have to be careful of as well. Um, and just like an insurance company, insurance companies do not want to pay out
Right.
because they get tons, hundreds, if not thousands of claims, probably on a daily basis.
Wow.
So you have to, do your due diligence in setting things up to make sure you properly document and things of that nature. We have stuff on camera. So we had a lot of stuff on camera, so that made it easy to see. You can't really deny it; it's
Right.
there.
It's there, right?
And
Absolutely.
there's other things that we put within the property that help us as well. So Airbnb, in my opinion,
Hmm.
although it's great for hosts in the sense that you can quickly make some money, um, I would say the customer service isn't the best, and
Mm,
it's it's more geared for, I would say, for guests than it is for hosts. So hosts who I know who do this on a high level,
hmm.
um, all kind of share, I shouldn't say all, a lot of them share this similar feelings about Airbnb and are looking to move away from Airbnb, although Airbnb can be extremely lucrative, but there are definitely some pitfalls in it. And I have a video of that on my Instagram as well about some of the pitfalls with Airbnb,
Right.
because it's to me it's more guest friendly, and it can, in fact, let me tell you this.
Okay.
I just had a call, a young lady. She scheduled a consultation call with me today
Okay.
because she used to be an Airbnb host, and she got off of it because she had a horrible experience where the guest destroyed her house, and
Wow.
she tried to get Airbnb's help, and Airbnb,
Did nothing.
they didn't help her at all. So she lost money, and so she was asking me, things what she can do in place, what can I do to help her in that space to
Hmm.
try to avoid those things. And that just goes to show there are people who have been traumatized by Airbnb,
Right.
the hosts, because nobody wants their house destroyed. And on top of that, for you not to be reimbursed. And so I'll say this to be the last thing on this particular topic.
Okay.
This is why on my Instagram I tell people how important it is to set your business up properly. Do not be like so many hosts where you look at Airbnb and say, "Hey, I can make a lot of money," and you slap a house or an apartment up on Airbnb to make money. That
Hmm.
is not the proper way. This is why we're having so many issues with Airbnb as well, and the
Okay.
guests that show up is because we're not setting things up properly.
Mm. That mean that makes sense, but it goes right back to what you said before. Systems.
Mhm.
The systems that are
Mhm.
in place is just not going to work out. And
Yeah.
it sounds like just like when you were real, because you're a real estate, technically you're a real estate investor now, not even technically, as an Airbnb owner, you're a real estate investor. So
Yeah.
as a real estate investor, you know how they always say, hey, your money is made up front, not on the back
Yeah.
end. So
Uh-huh.
what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are you going to go next? Because it sounds like the way you're talking, it sounds as if you're like, okay, Airbnb is cool, but I want to go to the next thing. So what's the next thing for New Home Secrets? What happens next for you?
So it's still going to be in the short-term rental space.
Okay.
What I'm looking at is I'm actually kind of going back and forth between wanting, I shouldn't say wanting, looking to get with real estate developers and obtaining multiple units in one building at a time.
Okay.
And I know I want to do a luxury brand.
Ooh.
And the reason being is because how I service people is luxury. And that's
Right.
how it was even when I was a real estate agent. Um, the clients that I did have, they felt very cared for. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
And I I know that I can service um, more higher end people, and I prefer that myself anyway.
Hmm.
So the other thing is I'm also looking to, my goal is to get a like a quadplex, or even if I have to just get a duplex
Hmm.
by the end of this year, so that I have more control over my units.
Okay.
It's different when you are arbitraging because it's other people's property
Hmm.
and you have a little bit less control. I want full control, so that, and not because I'm a control freak, but I want to be, I want to be able to give my guests an experience of a lifetime, and I
Right.
can really only do that when it's my own property. So it's between that and long term, I definitely see me having something like a yacht that's short term rental, a houseboat that's short term rental.
Ooh. A yacht.
Um,
Okay.
on different islands. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who reached out to me because he's a realtor in the DMV as well as Dominican Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's possibly looking to see how we can collab to see about doing short term rentals in Dominican Republic.
Wow.
I think he said it's Susa. Susa, I think that's the name of the location.
Yes, Sousa. Yeah, I've heard of it before.
Yeah, yes. So that's where I see myself in the short term rental space. I also see myself where I'm not really managing when I'm at a high level, like how I want to be. I won't be really managing these units myself. I will have a full team of employees who will do that, and I kind of just oversee everything and really just give the ideas and the vision and have everyone else implement it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I see. And the reason for that is because the ultimate goal is to have real estate and develop land, or build something where I can house these women and children who are leaving domestic violent situations. And
Okay.
so that is the ultimate goal, to get to that point.
Right.
Because that'll obviously be a more nonprofit. And the other ultimate goal is to get back to dancing full time.
I like it. I
So
like it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
have a
think it's
big vision for the dancing aspect too.
that's awesome. I think it, yeah, I think it's Sosua. I could I might be
Yeah,
wrong. I might be
yeah,
wrong, but yes. But yeah, that's amazing.
yes.
So you're looking. Are you looking in the DMV area, or are you looking in Atlanta? Where are the areas that you're looking in
I'm
right
looking
now
in
for that?
more southern states.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So it'd
the
be
South.
Georgia. I'm even considering North Carolina. I have a friend who's in North Carolina.
Okay.
So if I find something there, I can probably, hire him and create a team around him
Mm-hmm.
to kind of run that space. And if I do that, then I would go to the location, stay about 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
to make sure everything's set up properly, to get the team together and all those different things,
Okay.
and then let it run on its own.
Okay. I got a couple people I
Yep.
can connect you with that are out there. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I had to write my notes to make sure I remind myself
No,
of
that's
my
cool. It's
notes.
cool. I love it.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's a lot. You got a lot of plans, but the fact that you
I
went through that,
know.
no, it's
I
not. It's not
know.
bad. It's not bad. It's not bad. Let's. It's not bad. But
I don't know how I'm gonna pull it off, but from what I'm hearing and from what God keeps telling me is, don't worry about the how. He just keep moving. And if those things don't happen
Mhm.
because He has other plans for me or bigger plans for me, I'm okay with that too. I'm not attached, to those things. I'm
Right.
open to what He has for me. So
No, that's a good thing. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So, I'm
yeah.
with you. I remember that quote from when I was a kid. I'll never forget that. Um, Now let's talk about your STR part. How did you get these two short term rental? How did you get the short term rentals properties from the beginning? Because that's something I don't think we covered. We didn't talk about how you actually got the properties and did all that other stuff to it from there.
Oh, I mean, I go to the apartment complexes and I apply for them. I apply for a corporate lease.
Ah, okay.
Um, so, again, you have some hosts that if they're not doing the business, or it's not really a business for them, they sublease. And subleasing is when you have a apartment in your name and
Mm-hmm.
then you sublet it out to someone else, i.e., Airbnb guests.
Right.
And for the for most, for what the lease says, that's illegal. You're breaking the contract, so you can't do that. However, when you get a corporate lease, which is you're getting a lease underneath your business name, it's not subleasing because your corporation is not a person, and a,
Right.
a, a corporation can't actually live in the unit. So that means they're giving you the okay to have someone else come in. Now, you do have some apartment complexes and they'll ask you, well, will you be the one staying in the unit? And I say no. And I tell them my business plan. Um, and so I go on those tours. I tour the property and I share my business plan and apply. And, if I get a yes, then great. And if I get a no, then we keep moving. It's a numbers game, just like anything else in real estate, where it's a numbers game. You got to just keep moving until you get the yes.
Absolutely. God knows for those who are cold calling right now as you speak, you know exactly what Janelle's talking about.
Exactly.
You can get told no a
Exactly.
lot. Okay. So that's
Yep.
cool. So that seems a lot easier than go I've heard some models where people will go and they'll talk to the actual owner and they kind of work wheel and deal and get into a deal. But a corporate lease seems a lot smarter and maybe a smoother process. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I'll say this. If you're talking about people going to homeowners who want
Mm-hmm.
to rent their houses out and they Airbnb those out or short term rentals those out, that's actually a really good option as well. And for a lot of people, that's preferable over the apartment complexes.
Mm,
So that's something that I'm actually starting to do myself
right.
because I kind of shied away from it. I'm not sure the real reason why. Or you know what? I think for me, I just really just wanted the apartment complex. I was like, I just want to stick to apartment complexes. But after experiencing some of the limitations
Mm,
with the apartment complexes, I am opening up to the landlords as well. So both options are great options, and people have a lot of success. Or even more success with the landlords, and
right.
you can actually get a yes way easier with the landlords
Really?
than you can with the apartment complexes. Yes, because the landlords, it's all about presentation. Again,
Right.
you have your business set up appropriately so that you can converse, you know, what your business is and what you all do and how you intend to operate with the landlord's property.
Right.
And so they're not asking for business credit. They're not, a lot of times they're not looking to see what your reviews are as a business.
Right.
They're not looking at the same things that the apartment complexes are looking for. And that's important because a lot of people who are getting into the space are getting into it brand new, which means that their business, their LLC, C Corp, or S Corp are brand new and you don't have history, right? And
Right.
apartment complexes, a lot of times they look for history. And if you don't have history, the landlords are actually your best route.
Mm.
Or I won't say your best route. It's a very good route to go. I'll
Now,
say that.
let me ask you. So, I've got. I know in the multifamily world, right? We the syndications thing. It's always
Hmm.
good to have somebody who has more experience. Do people do a lot of partnerships within the Airbnb space? Like, let's say I go
Yes.
find a Janelle who's been doing it for 30 years and it's just
Yeah.
me. Does that work?
Yeah. It's called co-hosting. Yep.
Oh, look at
Hmm.
that. I didn't
So
know that.
is different ways you can do it, but the main way is, um, let's say you want to get into this space.
Okay.
Let's say, okay, I have superhost status, and you're like, man, I just want to maximize. I just want to hurry up and get going. And so I say, okay, you can create your LLC. You'll put the listing underneath my business
Hmm.
and, me as a super host, and then you'll leverage that. And then I can actually teach you along the way, or I can run it for you.
Right.
A lot of people, they run it for that other individual, and so I will take a percentage,
Hmm.
and then you would get the remainder. But the you would get most of it because typically the how it works is you'll it'll be your unit that you furnish with your capital,
Right.
and then I run it for you, and it may be under my business name, or because I'm a super host.
Right.
And yeah, so I
Now.
might take like 15, 20, 30%, whatever that negotiation is,
Right.
and then you take the remainder.
So what exactly? And for those who don't know, because I don't know, what
Mhm.
exactly is a superhost, and how do you get that superhost status?
Oh, Superhost. Superhost helps you beat that algorithm. It pushes you up. It gives you credibility.
Okay.
It says that you're a great host.
Hmm.
You have guests who only look for Superhost when they're booking Airbnb because it tells them that they're going to be taken care of. It tells them that they're going to have a good experience at your unit or at your house.
Right.
It tells them that it's going to be clean. It tells them that you're going to have pretty good communication. So it kind of minimizes the anxiety and the worries that comes with booking an Airbnb. You know what I'm saying? People know typically know what to expect when they're booking a hotel.
Right.
But when you're booking an Airbnb, it's different host to host. So that super host status, is basically saying, hey, this is a great person to host with. You're more than likely to have a great experience with them. And so getting to the superhost status, I can't remember all the criteria. I want to say you have to have at least 10 bookings. You definitely have to have 5 star or very, very close to 5 star. I want to say it might be 4.95 or above or something like, or maybe 4.92 and above
Hmm.
stars. Um, what's the other? Oh God, I'm drawing a blank. But on the website, it actually tells you how you're able to the criteria for a
Right. Super
superhost
so status.
status,
Okay.
and I got it within a couple months of start.
Mm. Oh. Oh. Okay.
So,
Subtle
and,
flex, but I like it.
yeah, and the reason being is because I am huge on customer experience,
Right.
and I'm huge on just making sure that they have a good time and they don't have to worry about their unit. They can only have to worry about enjoying their vacation or whatever they're traveling for.
Right. So last question before we get into the last section, the last segment of the show.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
talked about the customer experience. What are your like top 5 things or top whatever? What are your top things that you want to make sure your customer gets or that you have to give them that experience?
I think I can tell you. I think I can tell you what I do. That might be
Okay,
easier.
that'll work.
Um, so when they book,
Hmm.
um, they get very quick responses from me within 2 minutes,
Okay.
right? And you'll say, "Oh, that's easy." Well, no, it's not that easy. You could be doing something, and it takes you 2 hours to
Right.
respond back to them. Um, and so, what that tells them is that you're attentive, and that their inquiry or their question matters to you. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, that's one of the things. The other thing is going a little bit of the extra mile. And so some of that is with some complimentary things and, bottled wine, Fiji water, masks,
Mm,
things of that nature. It can be anything.
right.
Things that you know that your target audience would appreciate, you would put that in your unit.
Right.
Um, that's two. And again, it's like, wow, they really thought enough about me to do this.
Right.
It can be a guest basket of, if say like you're hosting corporate executives, notepads and pens and water and maybe some cookies while they're working. I don't know, things of that nature. I say cookies because I'm thinking about my daughter's secret. Uh, you know, so yeah, that's two. What is the next one? Um, Oh, so if uh, I'm often asked, what are they traveling for?
Hmm.
And I ask that for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons I ask that is because I want to see what else I can do, again, to go the extra mile. So I had one gentleman said, hey, we're coming for my wife's birthday, and it's a surprise.
Right.
That he's actually bringing two other her friends to the unit to surprise her.
Okay.
I said, "Oh, that's wonderful." I said, "Tell your wife that I said happy birthday." But I didn't just stop at tell your wife I said happy birthday. I also bought an additional bottle of wine. I also bought a small cake that said happy birthday. And I also
Wow.
put some balloons in the unit. So when they arrive to the
Wow.
unit and they see happy birthday,
It's right. It's a whole on thing. Wow.
exactly. You
They
see
just
my
as surprised
point?
as her. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that and things like once they arrive and I get notification on my phone that says the this lock has been unlocked, or apartment one has been unlocked, then a message goes out to them saying, hey, so glad you made it safely.
Mhm.
Let me tell you some things that you can explore while you're here, things of that nature. Giving them a guest manual, but I'm giving y'all too much, yo. That's too much. Y'all can't
Fair
handle
enough.
all the sauce.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so we're gonna move into the last section of the
Yes.
show, and then after that, I
Yes.
want to make sure you get to plug everything you're working on, anything you're putting out there in the world in the ether. I'm certain you have some kind of program or product you want to push, so I definitely got to do that. So, first question is what we call troop to task, and you and I have talked about this
Mhm.
before, but I'll regurgitate it for those who are new and listening. This is where you give them the first step that they can take into the STR space that you would recommend for them to get started.
Yeah. They're not going to like my answer
Okay.
because the first step is still going to be setting up your business properly.
Okay.
So, what does that mean? That means registering your business, right?
Mm-hmm.
LLC, whatever it is that you want to do, registering your business, getting an address for your business, not your home address and not a P.O. box. Yes, you can do a virtual address, but when it comes to getting business loans and things of that nature, you want to have an actual address. But for the time being, a virtual address works perfect. Get a phone number for your business, not your personal phone number.
Mm-hmm.
You also want to verify your business on Google. So I believe that's Google Workspace. Um, and once you start getting guests in, you also want to send out for them to put reviews. And that's something I'm working on right now, right? For mine. But it's setting your business up properly, creating a social media for it,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram and Facebook,
Nice.
and even LinkedIn. My daughter's going to be doing that for me because I don't like doing LinkedIn. Um, and even a website. Now, a lot of hosts will say you don't need a website. You don't need it. But if you are planning to go the rental arbitrage with apartment complexes, you do have some that look. Not too many, but they may look. But you at least at bare minimum do your social media.
Right.
And I need to hire someone to handle my social media for my short-term rentals because I ain't got time. So to be honest with you, that absolutely is going to be your first step. Now, if you decide that you are doing short-term rental for your own property, so let's say, you know what, Janelle, I don't want to do arbitrage. I'm not using other people's property, so I don't even have to worry about that. I'm going to say still set your business up, but let me give you another step that you can do. Give me a second so I can think. The first step you want to do is doing market research.
Okay.
Again, not the sexiest thing. It's a little bit boring. I get it, but that's what's going to help you kind of um, know what you can charge and know the gaps with your competition. And so, what I mean by that space is you may find out that you may think that your house is so dope and so gorgeous that you want to charge $200 a night, but market research shows that your competitors are only charging 175. And so, are you going to get bookings, especially as a new host? For $200, chances are you
Probably
probably
not.
won't. Now, what matters is comparables, and anybody that's in real estate knows about comparables. It needs to be comparable to that. God, I think I just said it two different ways.
That's cool.
Anyway,
Don't worry about it.
so if you have a house, so if you have a house and it's 2 bedroom, 1 bath, don't
Hmm.
compare it to a house that has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It needs to be on the same line. And so that's one of the things you want to do so that you can when you set it up on Airbnb, you start getting those bookings fast because you've already done your homework and you know what to charge guests. So and then again, you also may want to even consider giving a little bit of a discount for an incentive to hurry up and get those bookings. The quicker you get those bookings, the more money you get in your pocket quick. And then the quicker you start getting those reviews, which is going to bump up your algorithm as well. So I think that was helpful for some first steps.
Ooh, somebody just made out with the bank. Okay. Let's go into the last question, Janelle. The last question is what
Okay.
question do you wish you were asked more often? And what's the answer to that question? The toughie.
Uh, gosh, I I don't that is hard. What question do I wish I was asked more often?
Mm.
Um, Hmm. Hmm. You know what? Because recently I've been getting, oh, I see you do Airbnb. I want to get into Airbnb.
Hmm.
Um, what do I need to do? And I don't. I wish they would rephrase it as to, can I wish it was like, how do I run a short term rental business versus how do I work Airbnb?
Right.
Let me tell you why that's so important. Um, and in some big cities they already have regulations in place and things of that nature, and in other cities that's happening where they're coming in, they're putting regulations, they're making the barrier for entrance a little bit not difficult, but you have to take a few extra steps, and they're
Hmm.
putting restrictions because you have so many bad hosts. And
Right.
so it ruins it for good hosts. And good hosts include good hosts who actually care about their guests and actually care about their business.
Hmm.
And so Airbnb is getting such a bad name, where hosts, good hosts, are having issues acquiring rental arbitrage because
Wow.
of the bad hosts. And so I wish that people would ask me, how do I set it up properly to run a real and strong short term rental business
Hmm.
versus how can I make money on Airbnb?
That's an excellent thought process because, like you said, the words hear it here first. Words have
Hmm.
actual meanings, right? So everything
Hmm.
you word, you have to word it correctly, and that's a
Hmm.
really good way of doing that. And for those who are
Yeah.
listening still, a little bonus for you because I did a little bit of STR research myself, and I
Hmm.
called my county and asked them, "Hey, is there any? What are the laws for Airbnb? Right? What are the
Yeah.
Airbnb regulations?" Janelle, I was laughed at on the phone. The guy laughed at me. He was like, "What are you talking about? We don't have any laws." I said, "Okay, well, thank you for your time, sir. I appreciate it. I'm gonna go ahead and get my embarrassed self off this thing. Have a great day." Right?
What are you
This,
talking about? We don't have
right?
any.
He was like, he literally laughed, like no joke, not
Yeah.
exaggeration.
Yeah.
Started laughing on the phone and said, "We don't
Yeah.
have any short-term rentals
So
here."
sometimes the state or city may have some regulations in place for short-term rental. So
Yep.
there's another thing, the terminology.
Mm,
That's another question. Stop asking
mm,
me about Airbnb. And even for me myself, I'm going to stop putting Airbnb on my videos because the correct terminology is short-term rentals.
right.
Airbnb is the platform. You know what I'm saying? So that's
That's
like,
true.
oh, I want to start a booking.com. Nobody
Yeah.
says that
Give
because
me
it's
a
a platform.
Kleenex. Give me a Kleenex. No, it's tissue.
Right,
Kleenex
exactly.
is just a brand.
So, so one, it could be terminology too,
Mm-hmm.
where because I know Maryland has, well, especially DC for sure.
Yeah.
But sometimes it may not be your state or city. Your HOA may have those restrictions.
Ooh, that's a good
And
point.
it can be broken down. There is a neighborhood in Atlanta where it's banned. You know what
Wow.
I'm saying? So you have to do your research on that as well. However, uh, there are workarounds to what's in to the,
Loopholes. Okay.
but
Okay.
yeah, there are loopholes.
All
But I ain't gonna tell y'all, not right now.
right.
That's
I
giving out
love
to.
it.
But I will say this: read it. When they say, "Oh, we have regulations or there's ordinances, whatever is in place," read it, see what it says, and then say, "Okay, well, what does that mean? What is the
Right.
definition of this?" And then you can start figuring out the loopholes.
So let's give the people, Janelle, because we're going to close out now, but let's give the people what they want. I want them to get a hold of you. I know somebody's made it to the end of this podcast, the end of this video cast, and they're like, I got to talk to the best to ever do it. I need to get a hold of Janelle. How do they get a hold of you? How can they work with you? Plug everything right now.
The best way is through Instagram. So if you go to New Home Secrets, the link in my bio has everything in there. So if you want to schedule a call, um, it has everything in there. Now, as far as if you want to work with me, scheduling that call, that 15-minute call, is the best way so that I can find out what your needs are and then I can assist you. So, newhomesecrets.com, link in the bio, and it says schedule a 15-minute consultation. And then we go from there.
Janelle, you are beautiful. You are amazing. You are
Thank
the
you.
best. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
I hope somebody got some value out of this. Make sure you go back and watch this if you're on YouTube. You'll see Janelle's tag come across the screen 500 or 600 times. I promise you, it's probably still not enough, and you might miss it. But if you go back, you'll catch it. We thank you guys for tuning in today. Again, thank you so much for coming on, Janelle. Ladies and
Thank you.
gentlemen,
I appreciate it.
it's our
Thank
absolute
you.
honor. It's our absolute honor. Remember, everybody, you're better than you were, but you're not half as good as you. I mess it up every time. You're better than you were, but you're not half as good as you're gonna be. Love you guys. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.